2025. 5:30. We're calling the meeting to order. And forgot to. Our secretary's not here, so we forgot on the meeting minutes again to copy the. We have them out there, so I guess everybody got them. So we can review and approve the previous meeting minutes that were sent out by Heather. If there's any comments, questions on those meeting minutes. Nope. Okay. Entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? That's a vote. So Tecton's not here tonight, but the design, you want to give a brief update?
I can give an update on that. Thanks for having us. And the charrette went well. I think the presentation, the oversight, the previous description of what concurred, and some of the questions that came from the public, I think, were well received and solidified. They left the information up for, I want to say it was another week, roughly after. He's got all of the comments and responses from that, and he's compiling it right now. He's looking to hopefully have that sent out by the end of the day today, early tomorrow, to the committee. That's going to do two things. One, it's going to provide us with some insight of frequently asked questions that we can answer and maybe publicize in a trifold as we move forward. In addition to that, it's going to give us more information as we provide our next public forum or public meeting. We can include those concerns or questions or even modifications and provide a more transparent and updated information to the public and the community. So I'm hopeful and anticipating something by the late evening or early tomorrow for the follow-up questions.
Do you know if there was did he say anything about the number of responses afterwards?
Yeah, he says there were quite a few, which was great. So that meant there was a number of people from the public watching, which was nice.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yep. So that's pretty much the update. We also, I presented to the architects. We sat with the fire department and just went over their program and just make sure that what was designed a while back is still meeting their needs for now, and not only today, but for the next 50 years. And there were some commentary and a pretty good list that we provided to Tectron to see if they could implement some of the requests for changes based on our review and the program review of the fire station. And the feedback was none of them were insurmountable. There were some good comments, some good feedback, and it's going to hopefully lead into a little bit of reduction of square footage due to the efficiencies that we looked at. And it's going to improve overall of the department, not only program of the living quarters, but the apparatus as well we went through. So he'll be presenting that probably over the next meeting or two, just with those updates and the changes that were done with those plans.
Okay.
And that pretty much is the design aspect of it. He'll attend the next meeting with those updates as well.
Okay.
So the next one is budget.
Thank you, sir.
Budget. The big.
So I spent probably the last 2.5, 3 weeks really looking over the budget and just trying to get some formatted numbers. I presented the budget to each committee member just for your review and comment, obviously. I went and broke it down to obviously in proportionate sections for the budget: administration, architectural services, testing, commissioning, construction, and then there's some soft costs associated with FF&E and along with the contingency. I've tried to encapsulate every cost associated with what I feel the station's going to incur during the process. And I also, on the construction aspect of it, I reconciled with the architect too, just to make sure the conceptual drawings that are currently there and the numbers that we're doing a takeoff for are accommodating what he's seeing in the market as well. And we reconciled and agreed upon those numbers. Based on that, I can do two things. I can go through the budget and 70,000 square feet and come to the end number, and then be able to provide you what some of those breakdowns are. Administration-wise, which would include the owner's project manager, Any of the advertising, builder's risk, and moving expenses, we showed it around $855,000. The design services, I was able to talk with Tectron and just went over what they projected initially back in January 21st or 25 with their budget, and I was able to reduce the cost. You'll see it about $250,000 overall. The testing and commissioning, we covered geotech, which would include wetland geotechnical services and a land survey. On-site testing is the concrete, structural steel inspections that we'll be doing, and any of the other independent testing. Commissioning, we carried about $25,000 for a commissioning agent. That's outside of our person looking at the commissioning aspect of it and the design team's designer. The construction cost estimate, obviously we're originally it was around $25,322,307 based on Tectron's takeoff, based on some of the costs associated with the reductions and what we're looking at. We're did a takeoff with today's cost at $24,800,000. The utility back charges, we usually carry about $50,000. I don't know what that is until we get further down the road and determine, the load and the proximity of where it's going to be coming in from. FF&E, we carried basically $759,500 for that. There are some items that we are going to look at a little closer as the drawings evolve and actually the room layouts happen. We'll get a better count on what they're looking for furniture. I'm going off of just square footage that are currently there. This number may tweak up or down depending on the wants and needs for those particular spaces. So, and then I carried about a little under a 5% contingency, which would the total construction at today without the design reflections that we're looking to try to do on reduction of square footage, we're at $30,225,800 as of right now.
And I don't think you mentioned it, but I know in our previous discussions this is a conservative estimate in terms of.
Yeah. So right now, we're tracking, public safety buildings, police and fire, we're tracking a little over $850 a square foot to almost $900. We've seen the last few bids coming in up for fire stations. They've been in the $810 to $780 range. So I'm carrying $800 as a conservative number just till now. Until you got to remember we're at a conceptual design right now. As this design evolves, it'll give me a little bit more detail to really put some hard numbers for cost estimating against it. In addition to that, we have actually carried the point of construction to midpoint construction of the overall schedule. So we've forecasted some of the projection out to that point.
Some of the escalation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you got some questions.
Having no construction background whatsoever, these type of numbers, at what point are they somewhat solidified? It's a lengthy construction period. Is there a point where people bid on jobs and they're locked in for those?
Yeah.
prices?
So what'll happen is as the design evolves, we're going to be doing two more estimates. The designer's going to get the drawings from conceptual drawings to schematic, and then he gets to design development, which is about 60% complete of the overall design. It gives us a lot more understanding of what the mechanical systems are and the components within the building to be able to really, do a forecast cost associated with that. Once we have that cost, we're going to see whether we're in line with the projections that we're carrying, and then it gets into 90% construction documents. At that point, we're really solidified exactly what we feel the cost is and what today's numbers are coming in at that point. I'm forecasting out based on this budget what I think it's going to be going out to that point based on historical numbers that we've carried. At 90%, we're getting to the point of bid. So it's typically 6 weeks of bidding. That number's firm at that point. So the contractor is not only taken a good set of drawings and the specifications. He put in some hard numbers with all the file subs that'll be involved and handing us a number that he feels he's going to be able to bid this project for. And that solidifies a hard number at that point, which I hope is lower than what I'm showing you right now.
Thank you.
Okay?
What's the what are the numbers on the side?
So that's a great question. I actually, during our conversation, the chief and I and some of the committee members were looking at like what would be the costs associated with the soft costs totals be, and I just took the soft costs like between the OPM, the architectural services. I carried the testing and the FF&E, which came to $4,178,000. And $4,178,800 was the number it totaled to, less the contingency. The contingency is another $1.2 million. And the contingency is always carried for a number of different reasons. We carry it for, unforeseen conditions. It could be sometimes building officials require a certain, even fire departments, when they look at a building, like it tweaked a little bit. Those are changes that sometimes happen. We carry a contingency for a number of different reasons. That contingency will also hopefully, not be used. It tentatively, a portion of it gets used, but it doesn't always get used. And we usually carry that number outside of what the construction costs are.
So, just to follow on to it, we'd had meetings with the town manager and finance to discuss it a little bit, and so we're adding those up as the soft costs because there's so we'll be recommending later on or discussing about it that between stabilization, free cash, and the reserves account, have like $5 million put toward this job, so that we're only looking at like a $25 million loan that ultimately would go. So that's kind of that's where the numbers started coming from, was to look at that, what the soft costs were, and take those out of the construction loan portion of it.
That's correct.
Yeah. And the I'm sorry I missed the first couple minutes, but the timeline for that 60% reconciliation.
So that's a great question. May town meeting will actually allow. I was hoping between now and town meeting, we could allow some funds to be able to have the design evolve a little bit to get us ahead of the game as far as, once town meeting lets loose and let's move forward. We have, approximately 10 months of design. The sooner we can get some of those miscellaneous items done ahead of time, the better. So we're going to be having that conversation as we move forward, but it's typically 10 months from the time they're let loose to the time they can get it out to bid.
Okay. Yeah, so the 60% would be somewhere between the 0 and 10 months.
Right.
Okay. And I think we talked last time that that's a town manager decision. Is that something this committee can,
For which?
to let the design team loose?
Well, that's the town meeting. It'll be brought up at town meeting. We'll present. If town meeting approves it, then it'll be on the May ballot for the town to
approval.
for the residents to vote on. And if it's passed on that one as well, then
Yeah, I think the opinion is that there is still some money left in the purchase of the property, but I don't think the design fits under the warrant article of what that's supposed to be used for. So basically, there's no money authorized by town meeting for the design work at this point. So that will have to come with the May vote, unless we decide that it makes sense to call a special town meeting before the May one. But I really don't anticipate that being a route that we would go. But yeah, so that's so essentially what we have is an operating budget here that we're going to have to use as the number that we go to town meeting with, and that's why I think it tried to be on the conservative side. And I know you don't want to say anything that locks you into it, but that you did everything you could to make sure that this is the most it will be without some kind of craziness.
We did take off as much as I could on, your estimate is only at today's best guess at what numbers are coming in at. And it's historical data as well. So what stations have come in over the last 6 months we're carrying some of that impact and what we're forecasting moving forward. And I did mention to the chief and the committee members that, the tariff could have an adverse effect on overall costs. And that always gets a pit in your stomach because you don't know what that's going to impact. Structural steel is a major contributor of this building, and, what type of impacts that might have. So we're looking at that and monitoring it closely, and I'll be able to provide updates as we move forward.
So within this budget then is the contingency factor that's typical. So what we're, essentially looking at is a $30 million budget that we're cautiously optimistic that we would come in under when everything was said and done. So that would be the amount that town meeting and would need to authorize to be spent on the project. And then the debt exclusion vote, which would be the vote of the public, would be, and I guess if we're ready to kind of go into that item, would be a smaller number. So we were looking at suggesting a $25 million borrowing, essentially by using reserve. And we've had, so Mark and I and the chief had discussions with town administration about what would be potentially available. And I think the feeling is that $5 million of free cash stabilization fund, whatever they decide ultimately to use, would be available to offset the borrowing. So we wouldn't have to borrow the full 30, we'd be borrowing at 25. And so, and that, the checked with the bond rating agency, and that won't affect our bond rating or anything. So I think from a financial perspective, the town is on board with, $5 million to, put toward us out of reserve accounts, so that the debt exclusion authorization would be for 25, which then I think the chief has provided, an impact
So
statement here.
yeah, so a couple of things. So when we use the along with the stabilization funds and stuff, that doing that, if we're not financing that monies, they did a calculation based on the if we're not financing the 5 million, we actually saved 1.7 million over not financing. So on top of, so it's lowering that, it's not affecting our bond ratings, and so as well. So it's kind of helping that out. So then they ran some numbers for us, and based on the average house. Now, as if it goes forward and we get approvals, in May, you're going to be short-term borrowing for the first year and a half or more, because you're only doing design work and stuff. You're not, we're not spending a ton of money. It's not until you rig it into construction you start to build it more and do it all. So it'd probably be your fiscal year 2028 when you're really looking at the full impact of the borrowing on it. And right now, the way the town did crunched some numbers on it, if it is in fact a $25 million, as it stands today, it would be $257 and $58 a household for on the average household, which runs $64.50 a quarter on that. So that's the projection right at the moment. That's based on the average house assessment value of $457,110 for the town.
Yeah. So
And when's the town meeting?
May,
May. And where's the debt exclusion vote happen?
like the next week.
The next-
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks after that.
Gotcha.
I'm
So-
not sure what the exact dates are, but the town meeting comes first, and then the
So-
town election.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking, or tonight we're going to be looking to do a have vote and a motion to go and present to the selectmen at the next meeting. Present the job to one, let them know what's going on, but then two, to come up with the to present for the budget and the idea of using the stabilization and free cash funds and stuff, and bring it to them and let them for them to vote and approve it from that point going forward. So
It would be a recommendation from this committee
Yeah.
to them.
So, which I have prepared when we're ready to vote on it. But if there are any discussion we want to have before or after. It doesn't really matter. Or any other questions?
Any other questions on the budget or, yeah?
I can tell just from past experience and having gone through this process with a number of different towns, the impact that the town of Auburn has done and the, the town manager and, the select board have done a tremendous job to reduce, by being able to utilize those funds to reduce the cost for the bonding. Portion of it is significant because not a lot of towns have that availability. They max themselves out and, they're chasing themselves. And to be able to reduce it to only have, an impact at $64.50 a quarter to build a brand new fire station headquarters is exceptional. And I give the town of Auburn credit for, their fiscalness as they move forward.
I'll just ask, because I know you said this before, comfortable going with this?
I'm conservative with that number right now.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Did you mention that there were still some efficiencies that may pull
Yeah.
that number down?
Yeah. So as I indicated earlier, when I said we gave the information to the architect to encompass into the design to try to reduce some square footage, and we looked at efficiencies within the building to try to reduce the square footage. And what I'm hoping for is I based my number on 31,000 square feet. I'm hoping that we can shave another, 500 or 600 square feet out of the building to reduce the cost that much more to embellish the numbers that I'm giving you for reductions. So.
I mean, just everybody here, I mean, this number makes sense to me, looking at it, right? I mean, I kind of just look at bids all day. Makes sense to me, the project, if you'll agree, it feels like there's relatively low risk, right? We're not dealing with crazy sites, crazy elevation changes, right? Where we'd see large cost. If our biggest challenge is material procurement on a structural steel package, or even if we get into the mechanical, electrical stuff, if that reduction in scope goes down, you're really seeing that contingency value potentially increase, right? It feels like that's reasonable to move forward.
To your point, the only thing that we don't know when we're trying to get the geotech engineer and the test pits and the borings done so that we'll know exactly what the site conditions are. Because getting out of the ground's, 90% of your risk initially. So, our team has already engaged the geotech. And kind of what was their results on when they're trying to...
Yeah, I reached out to them late last week, and they gave me a call this morning and said that they're getting the team together. They expect the earliest they can be out here is end of this month. So probably last week of February, and we can get the DPW on board with that. And he's going to call me back tomorrow with an exact date so I can then move forward with that.
And what that does is two things. It's going to give us gradation. It's going to show us the ledge content within our area. It's going to show us groundwater. So that's all going to give us concrete information as a design evolves. We're going to try to minimize the change orders based on that information.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
All right. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend to the Select Board, Finance Committee, and Town Administration a financial strategy to use $5 million from a combination of free cash and stabilization to reduce the borrowing amount for the fire headquarters construction to $25 million.
Second.
And we have a second. Okay. Any other questions on that motion? And
Just
Good
a
stuff.
quick,
Okay.
just a quick question.
Sure.
Just based on the estimate, that gets us to 30. This one was 3228. I mean, are we short right out of the gate for the recommendation?
Oh, the numbers that we're carrying on that, obviously, that's based on what the cost projections were at 31,000 square feet. We feel that within, and the designers already identified some locations that we can do some reductions for. So I think we're safe.
Okay, but I don't know.
yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean,
Are we putting ourselves in a corner where we'd have to go back to make an additional recommendation, or can the select board adopt a different amount, or should we just?
Well,
We could modify it just to say
they
25, 200 or something, or 220, you know.
Or not to exceed $25,225,000, that's all.
Yeah, we could do that. So,
That I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I don't want to go back to the well. Hopefully, we can
we can
keep
take
on driving the number down. But yes, I understand the concern.
To your point, in the event that you needed that, I feel that the contingency is funded appropriately, so you could utilize some of the contingency to fund that if you needed to. Worst case scenario.
so then the proposed amendment would be everything up to borrowing amount for the fire headquarters construction not to exceed $25,250,000.
My only recommendation was possibly put that 225 on the free cash reserve amount, and then leave a nice clean number for the borrowing piece. That's
So the contingency.
Raise the
number
contingency.
is in that 5 million, so we're not borrowing on the contingency.
Yeah.
So if we needed to take the 225 from contingency, that is part of the free cash number. So the 4.1 million in soft costs,
correct.
that 5 million will cover 100% of the soft costs and the majority of the $1.2 million contingency.
Okay.
So I think what Joe is saying is that with the additional 400 to 500 square feet, they probably think they're gonna be able to eliminate that $225,000. Even if it went to 30 million on the nose, then the 5 million brings the borrowing to 25. But if that contingency was needed, there's 900,000, 8 to 900,000 in the contingency money out of that 5 million. So I think what we're saying is, we don't anticipate that the borrowing is going to be more than 25 million. So between that potential reduction plus the 800,000 in the contingency of the 5 million, I agree with you. I personally would rather keep it a cleaner number at 25 million.
Just to put it in perspective, it's 285 square feet that we're looking to cut, and that efficiency can happen pretty quickly.
Okay.
Just to put it in perspective.
As long as the experts are
No,
comfortable
I'm just
with
saying,
the clean
yeah.
5 and 25 numbers, then
You're talking a foot off of one. I mean, it goes quick. You can.
At $800 a square foot, that's 228,000.
Right. I just did that.
I guess I'll
So do we want
You
to
double check
track
with me.
my
Okay. Okay. So then we'll go back, unless everybody's really married to it, we'll go back by unanimous consent to the 25 million number. So it'd be, I make a motion to recommend Select Board, Finance Committee, and Town Administration financial strategy to use $5 million from a combination of free cash and stabilization to reduce the borrowing amount for the fire headquarters construction to $25 million based on a $30 million budget. 30 million and change that we hope is going to go down in the next few weeks.
Second again.
Any other questions?
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion's passed.
Any other questions?
Budget-wise, I don't think so. We had on here just the mailers. You mentioned it briefly before, but if we don't have the update from the charrette and
The
stuff.
goal was ultimately, I want to put out the mailer, and I want it to be as transparent and factual as we can. As we had these public forums and the charrettes, it's given us some more questions from some residents that we'll be able to include frequently asked questions on that mailer. We also, now that we have some more financial information of cost impacts to the overall town, I think we'll be able to include that. So over the next few weeks, I'd like to refrain that refine that information within the trifold and be able to, get the committee to say, yes, this is the information we want on the trifold mailer and handout, and then we can solidify that and figure out a date that we can get that out.
Okay.
That answer your questions on it?
I think so. So next item was just open discussion with committee members. If there's any other discussion, comments, concerns out there you want to bring up right now, research.
I think we should now start thinking about how we socialize this information. So when we talk about what's going on in the trifold, I do think that not only is it a trifold, but probably a presentation that we start to assemble and think about having some, open meetings that, we, even before we mail something out, that we, I think, have everything we need in order to say, this is the project that we're recommending that we move forward with. This is what's going to be on the ballot. So I think we could just start thinking about venues for that, or types of, whether that's at the senior center one day, or I don't know, where different groups hang out around town, but try to have some public meetings to, and certainly invite all the town meeting members, for example, to come and get an information.
I think having at least one more prior to the mailing, because it'll give it, you had a certain group attend the charrette. You'd like to see if you could get a different, section of town to be able to comment and have some questions on it. And it'll just solidify, with the information that you're providing.
Yeah. So.
And now hopefully we'll have a more refined drawing. We'll have costs associated that you'll be able to actually transpose to the community, and you're going to get feedback from that as well.
Could we just have it in the West Street station there in the kitchen? And just have everybody cram in there and say, hey, here's what we're trying to replace. But I don't know if
It's not a bad idea,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. Or even at headquarters and in the conference room, and have everybody pushed up against the wall and say,
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about was reaching out to some of the different civic groups, like reaching out to the Elks, reaching out to the Masons, reaching out to the veterans, and seeing if we could get a meeting of their members with the Auburn residents, like at their locations, and maybe do some road trips and present that information. To Joe's point, if the next time you talk about it, you can find out when he thinks he'll have like the updated floor plan, and then again, any changes that may have come from the charrette exterior. I want to make sure we have the most up to date,
Yeah, right.
conceptual design, both of the exterior and the floor plan before we do that. But I think we're getting close. So if Matt knows when he thinks that'll happen, that coupled with the financial information, I think we'll be ready to hit the road probably in the next 30 days, I would think.
And just to even like some of the questions off the charrette, highlighting the expandable location of the building. If in the near future, 50 years from now, you needed, additional space, I wanted to make sure it's clearly earmarked on the drawings as we present it to the community.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of that unknown out. That's all.
yeah. So maybe a potential topic for next meeting is really iron out the details of what the content is. I think is the first thing that we need to sort of agree on, and then.
And if the committee wants me to, I can start reaching out to those civic groups, and if there's groups that you think of that we should meet with, maybe softball or Boy Scouts or, whatever, any group that we can get ahead of, feel free to, email me, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to start getting some potential dates that we could meet with these groups.
That'd be a good idea.
I know you're half kidding about having it here, but I think that's a great idea. Right? We did it with the folding table and chairs.
In the garage.
As long as you can get people to show up.
Yep.
Well, I think that's two different perspectives, right? Chief, for years, to open houses and you get limited attendance, but I think we may have to take the show to them, sort of. I don't know, is that a show business or a sales pitch? I don't know, what I've heard that somewhere before. You take the show to them, whether it's at their meetings, and we've got a wide group here. I mean, in different stages of our lives and different stuff. I think we have to think from, the younger parents to the older parents to the seniors to the civic groups. I think we need to sort of really get out there and
I couldn't agree with you more. The one thing that you do have that you didn't have prior to this is some more hard numbers associated with the project and some of the cost impacts to it. So I think you'll get more attention to that now that you have that information.
Yeah. And then the first thing I think is we should update the website with just put it right on top. Just like here's the update to where we're at with the project, and we've got a budget, and we were making a recommendation that we're 25 million for the borrowing, and this would be the impact, and from the town has told us this, and this would, by using stabilization and free cash, we're going to save 1.7 million over the 20-year borrowing span, and just put all that right on the site so that when somebody asks on Facebook, we can just point the link and say, here's all the information.
That piece about the 1.7 is a little confusing, at least from my standpoint, because I can already see like, okay, well, if you're telling me I'm saving 1.7, this number should be 23.3. You know what I mean? Like, someo's going to come
Well,
with that.
no,
that's
If you were
yeah.
borrowing the aspect.
If you borrow the 5 million
Oh,
and you're borrowing at the 30,
I get
You'll
it.
understand.
I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying when we say like project 25, we've already say it's 1.7. The thought process is, well, great, that number.
Right.
Now you're only need to borrow. It doesn't make sense for us because we understand it. But once you start, socializing, I think that's the piece that.
A part of your presentations, just having a spreadsheet that you can put up onto a screen and show the people, it puts perspective into it.
And I think we have some comparables now where we have a number, because all I keep hearing about is Millbury Station. At least now we can,
Yeah.
we can compare to who else has done projects and not that. I don't
Well,
know.
I think the good thing is that we're right in line with most of the comparables. So
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, Southbridge's fire station is programmed at a total of 31,000 square feet, and they're projecting that the cost of their project at 25 million. They've already spent 5 million on land acquisition and cleanup and hazmat and all that, so all in, their project will be a total of 31 million, but they're looking at expending 25 million on the same 31,000 square feet.
That is an interesting point, though, Chief. That there will be a little pushback on the cost, because the acquisition of the land was last year. But I think,
But it was
the selling
multiple
point is-
use, so
Well, I think yes.
That's the message
That's
we
what I
gotta,
was going to say.
you know,
That's multiple
right.
use that this project is using.
Yep.
Whatever.
as little as we
47%
can.
of it, and
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea is in Auburn, you want to build up because you only have 16 square miles of total town.
Right.
So, yeah, you can't
not a lot of options.
build a big sprawling, single story building, or you can, but then you won't be able to build anything else ever again. That's the so.
yeah, just something for the sales that the site has this much square footage, and we're utilizing this in future expansion growth as a.
So to that point, Kevin, I think in Southbridge, their all-in is gonna be 31. That's a borrowed number of 31. So, yes, people may say, well, you did 4 here, you're doing 5 here. We're fortunate that we have that advantage, because really, at the end of the day, at least with the people that I talk to, the only number they're interested in is how much is it going to increase taxes.
Right.
So the fact that we were able to spend, 4 million for the land, 5 million, as an acquisition, that's doing what we can to reduce the borrowing. So that's the difference, is when you look at Southbridge's all in on this, it's like their tax impact was close to $350 annually. So I think that's one thing that we got to stress, is that, okay, people may look at the total number, which is fine, but at the end of the day, the fact that we're in the financial position that we're in allowed us to only have to borrow 25 towards the project, and that's huge. Because otherwise, like in Southbridge is a good example, you're talking another $100 annually on top of whatever that amount is.
Sure.
That's all
it's all good. Any more?
No.
Words, wisdom, comments. Okay. Next item up was public comment, and I don't see any public here, so we'll move right along. Just a note: the next meeting would be Tuesday, February 18th, because Monday is President's Day. So, I just want to. Is 5:30 okay with everybody? Still? Okay, just making sure that.
I'm going to be consistently 2 minutes late to everyone.
Okay.
Set it to 5:32.
I've tried every way to get from Marlboro to here. And it's just every time.
Okay. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We'll see you next on the 18th.